All right, we are here with Chris Swift of Swift Trading Incorporated. He is based in Nashville. He joins us in studio right now to help open up our trade. Well, it is open, but we'll take a look at if it's going to hang on to the same pattern that it had on the open here. Go. So let's dive in here, Chris. Okay. All right, let's go to the corn. How is that corn market holding up? It was pretty flat when it opened up. Well, it's getting just a touch easier, if you will, a touch softer. The March corn now trading a penny and a quarter lower at 375.5. The May down a penny and a quarter as well. Okay, now let's go to the soybeans. On the soybeans, we opened up about 9 higher. Right now, January up 7 1/4 at 896 3/4. Still pretty strong, but off its earlier highs by a little bit. The March contract 7 1/2 higher at 911 1/4. Okay, on the wheat. In Chicago wheat, we opened up softer there. We have the March contract down 3 1/2. We're at 521 per bushel. Kansas City wheat also opened up a little weaker. Right now on the Kansas City market, let's take a look at that March contract. It is currently trading 5 lower at 426. It's sitting right on the low of the day. The Minneapolis March is a penny and a quarter higher at 513 1/4. All right, Chris, let's take a look at these one by one here on the corn market. Okay. A little bit weaker in the knees today. Is there anything to make this market move ahead of that report tomorrow?
You know, I probably can't think of anything because nobody's going to want to really jump out there and put a big position on prior to, or they're going to want to make sure that they've got protected what they need on it. It'll be anxious to see if USDA really trims much of anything before the January report, and I think that's where most people will look for is the January report to have any kind of revisions that they're going to make that would possibly be a price mover.
So I talked with a gentleman over the weekend who was from North Dakota. He said he had been up there recently, and he said the snow was still waist deep in the cornfields up there. He said there's no way anybody's going to be getting any corn out of that area until at least the spring.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many unharvested acres that we get this year versus harvested, and there's still a lot of conflict between the planted acres and what was planted for insurance purposes versus what was planted to actually get a crop out of the ground.
What about soybeans? Now, they are trading higher today. Now, they're off of their early highs a little bit here. I've been hearing a lot of short covering taking place on the part of the funds. Is that something you expect to see more of?
Maybe, probably so. They had sold off quite a bit more than what beans and wheat had, what corn and wheat had last week. So they were down probably a good 30 cents where some of the other markets weren't. So to see them come back up just a little bit before that report's not surprising.
Any issues in South America? Everybody's watching their production now as the emphasis shifts from our production here down to South American soybeans.
I haven't heard too awful much about it. I don't think there'll be any reduction in planting whatsoever. I think with the U.S. and tariffs conflict with China there, that opens up a lot of possibilities to South America. So I don't see any fewer acres to be planted down there.
Why the weakness in the wheat?
I'm not real sure. I guess maybe some of the moisture that's coming in showed some of that moisture coming in over the plains there. Maybe that'll give it some benefit there and a little bit of snow cover. So,
all right. So there's a lot at play here. A lot of it could be tied to maybe the value of the dollar too when it comes to the wheat.
It could be, but still haven't moved. The dollar just hasn't moved. It fluctuates a little bit, but it doesn't. It hadn't moved 2% in probably 6 months.
I guess relatively speaking, it remains pretty strong to the other currencies.
Absolutely, it does. It's right up at the tip top.
Okay, we'll come back in a moment and we'll dive into this cattle trade and hog market activity. We're talking with Chris Swift, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're talking with Chris Swift right now, and he is with Swift Trading Incorporated in Nashville. And Chris, let's take a look at our livestock trade. Let's go to the big board and begin with live cattle. Higher across the board. Pretty solid gains. We have December up 33. We have February up 45 now. So it's showing a last trade of 125.42. The April up 33 cents. So it's not running away by any stretch, but it is higher across the board. Now, if you look at the feeder cattle market, currently you have that January contract up a dime. We're at 141.65, so not a big move, but it's interesting. All the other months beyond that, though, are trading 40 to 55 higher. The March is now up 55 at 142.22. It's within a dime of its high of the day. And look at where we had the low at 141. So we're $1.22 off of that early low this morning. That's quite a bounce. Now, if we look at the lean hogs, they started out under pressure, and they remain that way. December down 73 now at 60.40. The February down 40 at 67.15. So that's about 20 cents off its high of the day, but still lower on the session. All right, what's going on here? Why cattle showing strength and hogs showing weakness right now?
Well, in the cattle market, I just got back from Utah. Got to
Okay.
speak to, had the pleasure of talking to a lot of cattlemen up in there, and kind of the consensus there was that expansion is completely over with. We've killed a lot of cows this year. We put a lot of heifers on feed, and so now we've kind of changed the direction of our marketing from having to deal with overabundance of supply to now do we have the demand to continue to chew through that supply, which right now we do. We seem to have really good demand. We have a meat protein shortage in China that seems to be pulling product around the world, and whether or not it directly comes from the U.S., indirectly there is protein meat moving everywhere.
So it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for about the past 2 years, we have had placements numbers always higher than the year
That's
before
correct.
until recently. We've had a couple of months where it was maybe a little bit under a year ago, but still, generally, they're looking at higher placements all the time. They can't keep that up forever. Do you think that's now going to stop?
Well, no, I think it will stop. And we saw October of 18, we began to see those placements shy down quite a bit. And so only recently did we see October and November with heavier placements. We saw August and September lower placements due to the fire that we had, some price issues. Nobody wanted to sell a lot of cattle. So only this October, November time frame has had a little bit of an elevation of placements. But I think that's about it. I think it was just a slow marketing time frame. It's not any increase of inventory. It was just a little change in the marketing of them.
And interesting, where we're getting into the time of year when you normally think of in your mind like hams or turkey, you know, around Christmas, and yet the beef market is really strong. Lots of demand there, and then that jobs data last Friday didn't hurt either.
No, not a bit. And we've noticed over the last probably 4 or 5 years, as our economy has improved with employment and wages, that rib roast really has a lot of flair to the Christmas parties. So we see a lot of that. And, of course, all that business has already been transacted for the year, but it was as good this year as what it was last year.
Real quickly, do you think the hog market is justified being fairly low to contract lows here?
I would reserve. My opinions of that are very extreme, and I'm not real sure on air that I can convey those opinions.
Interesting. All right. So tune in next week.
Maybe so.
So you're thinking there could be something developing?
I think that there are issues out there in the hog market that have yet to be addressed, is what I think.
Okay. Can't wait till next week. All right. Well, thanks for coming in and teasing
Surely.
that one.
All right.
All right. Chris Swift of Swift Trading Incorporated in Nashville.
Certainly the story that keeps on growing.
Yeah, the mystery
All right.
deepens.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.